Hello YouTube, this is Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you today. Now for this one we're going to go back over to the US for this one, and I have another winter seasonal beer for you this time. This is actually one of the first American craft brews that we were able to get here in Scotland, and you can get their lager quite widely now, and we're going to the state of New York here. This is the Brooklyn Brewery's Winter Ale, and this is a Scotch ale, so for me being Scottish, this one should be quite an interesting one for me to review for you today. But a shout out again to the guys at Thistle News on Holborn Street in Aberdeen. This is where I picked up this beer. They've got a good little selection of craft beer there, so if you're watching from that area of the country, definitely give them a little look in if you like. You'll find the link to their Facebook page in the video description, so go check those guys out. Support your local businesses, as I always say. But as is usual for my beer reviews, I'll just take you through a little bit of a history of the brewery, as I always like to do. But as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go towards the second half of the video and you will catch that particular segment. Now, the founder of the Brooklyn Brewery is Steve Hindy, and he was an Associated Press correspondent, but in 1984 he returned to the US from a 6-year stint in the Middle East, and he settled in Brooklyn's Park Slope neighbourhood. But while in the Middle East, Steve had actually become really interested in home brewing after meeting many diplomats who brewed their own beers in countries like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and they did that there because alcoholic beverages are forbidden due to the Islamic law that's in place in these countries. But along with his downstairs neighbour Tom Potter, Steve decided to quit his job and founded the Brooklyn Brewery, and they commissioned the 4th generation German-American William H. Moeller to develop the recipe of the now famous Brooklyn Lager in Utica, New York, and they had to do this in the early stages just because of the limited resources that they had. But Moeller's grandfather had actually brewed beer in Brooklyn many years previously, and he'd left his brewing books and recipes to his sons, and they just passed through the family. There was actually quite a thriving brewing industry in Brooklyn and things like that in the late 1800s, so it's kind of died down and picked up again in recent years. But it was very difficult for Hindy and Potter in the early days of the brewery, and they found that many New York distributors were actually controlled by the big breweries and not really interested in the smaller brands. But they also hired Milton Glaser, who's known for producing the I Love New York logo, the little heart one that you see a lot of tourists wearing on t-shirts and things like that. But he designed the bottle art and brewery logo for them, and after some advice from Sophia Collier, who was the founder of the Soho Natural Soda Company, the pair bought a van and a beverage truck and began peddling their beer from store to store on their own. Now at this point in New York, crime was very high, and Hindy and Potter faced burglars, armed robbers, mob-connected people who wanted a slice of the brewery and things like that at the time, so it was very difficult for them in the early days. But New York taverns were also very sceptical because of the price of the Brooklyn beer was almost the same as some of the premium imports that they were getting, and it wasn't really very well known at the time, so they faced some real obstacles when starting up the brewery. But in 1994 the company hired respected New York brewmaster Garrett Oliver to design their planned Brooklyn brewery and to oversee the production in Utica. Now Garrett is also the editor-in-chief of the Oxford Companion to Beer, and he also authored the book entitled The Brewmaster's Table, and the new brewing facility was actually opened in 1996 by Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who also poured the first official glass of their first beer, Brooklyn Vice. But since then Garrett has developed many award-winning beers. Now in 2003 the partners decided that the company had grown to the volume where they could be a big client on the books of a distributor, so Tom and Steve sold their distribution division to 2 large New York wholesalers who had actually rejected them 15 years previously. Phoenix Beehive Distributors was one of them there. But at this point Tom, who had been running the distribution side of the business for 15 years, sold his share in the brewery to David Ottaway, who was a good friend of Steve's, and he'd actually been a very early investor in the brewery. But Tom also now runs a distillery called the New York Distilling Company in Williamsburg. I believe that's in the northern part of New York State there. But David's son Eric and Robin, they run the Boston Distribution Company for Brooklyn, and the Ottaway family did have roots in Brooklyn actually. Their grandfather, General John Blackburn Woodward, unsuccessfully stood for the mayor of Brooklyn in 1885, and he was the board president of the Brooklyn Institute for Arts and Sciences as well. But Eric is now the brewery general manager and Robin is actually the sales manager, so this family are still quite involved with the brewery, and it's good that someone who was involved so early maintains the running of this brewery. It's not been sold to a big conglomerate company, if you like. But today the brewery are apparently overseeing major expansions that will double their capacity with the creation of their Rolick brew house. They hope that this will allow Garrett and his team to develop and experiment with many new different recipes. But apparently the first of these experimental beers is a spicy saison beer called Brooklyn Radius, and it's brewed exclusively for the borough of Brooklyn. Hopefully when I go to the States in the summer I'll be able to pick one one of those up and review it for you. But nowadays their beer is apparently available in 25 states throughout the US and 20 countries worldwide. And 2013 is actually their 25th anniversary, and they've introduced the new Silver Anniversary Lager, which is a double bock version of the Brooklyn Lager, which was introduced back in 1988. So that's a brief history of the Brooklyn Brewery for you there. As I mentioned, quite an interesting one to talk about, and hopefully when I go to the US in the summer I can actually visit this brewery. Apparently they do tours and things like that, but you'll find the brewery website in the video description there, so check it out if you're interested, and you'll also find the link which will give you my other Brooklyn beer reviews that I've done for you in the last little while as well. But to tell you a little bit about the other beers that they do, they have the Perennial range, which includes the Brooklyn Lager, the Brooklyn Brown Ale. I have one of those to review for you at a later date. The East India Pale Ale, the Pilsner, Pennant Ale and Brooklyn Blast. They have their seasonal beers, which includes the Black Chocolate Stout, the Winter Ale, this one here, Monster Ale, Dry Irish Stout, Summer Ale, Oktoberfest and the Post Rock Pumpkin Ale. I also have one of those to review for you at a later date as well. But they've also got their big bottle range. This includes the Silver Anniversary Lager, which I mentioned a minute ago, Local 1, which is a Belgian style golden strong ale, Local 2, which is a Belgian style dark ale, Sobeke Ace, which is a farmhouse, Green Market Wheat, which is obviously a wheat beer, Bamboozle, Brooklyner Schneider, Hopfen Weiss, which is a Weissbock as well, and that's all the big bottles that they have for you there. But let's get on to the tasting of this guy. I'll just bring up the camera and make sure you can see this. I'll let you have a little look at the brewery artwork and things like that. It's the standard, so it's a similar label to what is on the Brooklyn Lager, as you can see there. This is a 6.1% Scotch ale, as it says here, brewed in New York. This is the typical sort of top that they have on their things here. They're all just different colours for the different ones here. The pumpkin ale that I have actually has a slightly different labelling system to this one, but as you can see, there is the standard Brooklyn cap as well, and these are just all different colours for their different beers. But let's get this guy out and get on with the tasting. As I mentioned, it's a 6.1% Scotch ale, and apparently it uses Willamette hops, and it's malted with Scottish Marist Otters, English crystal malts, Belgian aromatic malt and American roasted malts and oats. So this one should be quite interesting, and it's available from November to March, and apparently won gold in the 2009 World Beer Championships. So let's get this guy out and get on with the tasting here. Looking forward to this one. There we are, got this guy open. A little bit of smoke on the opening there, but let's get this guy poured and see how we get on. A nice sort of dark brownish colour there. Sugar up the last little bit of this and try and get a nice head on it. There we are, that's given me a nice head there, just a little glug as I actually took that out the bottle there. But yeah, a nice attractive looking beer, I have to say. A nice kind of, it's actually got quite a beigey head to it, this one, maybe just a sort of, just a half finger of head there. If I bring the light over and just let you see that, I'll bring up the camera to make sure you can see this actually. It's a nice sort of dark mahogany colour, this beer actually. It's slightly hazy, I can just see the shadows of my fingers going through there. I'll just bring the light round so you can see this. It's going to be funny. But yeah, you can see just this there. It's a nice sort of reddish mahogany colour, quite dark actually. You can see that better in the light there. But it's a really nice looking one. Quite hazy, just some bigger bubbles floating up to the top there, and the head is actually starting to fade now, but that should maybe leave just a little bit of lacing in the glass. In terms of the aroma here, let's move the light out of the way, get that out of the way. In terms of the aroma here, it's got a nice little bit of roasted character to it. It's very, very malty on the nose here. You've got a hint of spice in there too, but a lot of caramel and a lot of caramel toffee and brown sugar notes there. But it's a really nice smelling one, very malty as you would expect from a Scotch ale. But there's some toasted bready elements to it as well, some nuts and a nice bit of dark fruit in there as well, maybe plums, raisins and things like that, maybe some blackberries or something as well, but a really nice sort of dark and malty aroma to this one. And I've never actually tried this particular Brooklyn as well, so this is a first for me, this one, trying their Scotch ale. This should be really good. But yeah, really nice malty aroma here. If you get a chance to try this one, just take a little bit and have a little go at the aroma here. A really, really nice smelling one, this. But let's give this guy a taste. Hope you're enjoying your Christmas seasonal period here, as I'm doing with a lot of these beers that I'm drinking for you. Quite a sweet taste to this one actually, but a nice malty backbone as you take it in at first. But yeah, you're getting the dark fruits on the opening there. The kind of plum and dried raisins and things like that there. Really nice. fruity opening to this one, but it's actually got a nice light taste, and you're just getting the sort of roasted character mixed in there as you take that in with the fruits. It's quite interesting that way. It's got a sort of blend that I've never had with a Scotch ale before. But yeah, this kind of fruity, roasty opening, it's given way to more of a bready malt flavour that has a hint of spice to it actually, and the caramel brown sugars are just mixed in there a little bit as well. But yeah, it does have a little hint of roasted character. That bread, the bready malt flavours in the middle are quite roasty, and it just has that little hint of spice to it as well. And the brown sugar flavours are just mixed in there as well. It's a really nice blended one, this. They've got the flavour very well balanced actually. Yeah, the fruits are starting to come out again on the finish. It's got a very light aftertaste actually here. But yeah, it's interesting in this sense because for a Scotch ale, it doesn't really have much in the way of vanilla flavours, which is what you expect from a Scotch ale if you like, but it's got a very nice blend of fruits with a little bit of roasty character on the opening. Then you're getting that sort of bready malt in the middle that has a nice bit of roasted character and a little bit of spice to it. And the fruits are coming out again on the finish, and they're actually lingering there. It's got a really nice sort of light aftertaste to it. It's not too strong, but just a nice little bit of fruit on the end. Yeah, just a nice little bit of fruit there with that little bit of roasted character maybe as well. The roasted character is kind of in the background a little bit to the fruitiness here, but it does have a nice sort of lingering thing through it, and you do get a little bit of a roasted aftertaste, and that's sticking with it. As I say, it lingers quite a lot throughout this beer, but this is an interesting blend for a Scotch ale. With me being Scottish, I've had quite a few of these, but this one has quite an interesting blend of flavours if you like, and it doesn't have the vanilla element that you would sometimes expect from it, but that makes it quite an interesting one really. That roastiness that I'm talking about that is lingering, you maybe could describe that as just having a little bit of an earthy character, giving a little bit of earthy character to this beer. But this is really nice. It's an unusual blend for a Scotch ale in my opinion, and it's really nice. I mean, as you always want something unique when you try a different beer, and that's what this is giving you. This is a really nice one. In terms of the mouthfeel for this one, I'd say it's probably quite mid-bodied. It's got moderate carbonation. It comes in on the attack and makes it a little bit crisp at the beginning, but it sort of smooths out and makes the beer a little bit more syrupy as you progress through it. And that's usually what you want with a Scotch ale, is for it to be quite syrupy. But again, it's quite unique in that sense that it has the carbonation on quite a bit of an attack and being quite crisp on the opening here. But that carbonation is actually aiding the fruity flavours in this one. It's bringing them out a bit better. But it's also making it quite drinkable. That sort of light crispness to it when you're taking it in actually makes it quite a drinkable beer. It's a fairly easy drinking one. It's for a Scotch ale. It's not too syrupy, and it's a bit lighter than some of the other Scotch ales I've had, but I really like this one. It's interesting to try styles interpreted by, you know, different breweries and things like that. This is like what I was mentioning with the Einstök brewery in Iceland. Their water source makes sort of established beer styles. It gives them a really unique edge, and this is kind of what Brooklyn have done here with the Scotch ale. I think this is really interesting because it is a little bit different from what you would expect from the style, but they do it really well, and I have to say it's a really nice beer. But yeah, the main flavours you're getting in this one is a nice bit of underlying roasted character with the nice sort of dark fruits on the top there, plums, raisins, maybe a little bit of blackberries and stuff in there. But no, this is another really, really nice beer from the Brooklyn Brewery, and as I say, this is one of my really favourite beers that I've had from the States, or one of my favourite breweries rather. Sorry, I'm coughing away there. But I have another one of their beers to review for you at a later date. That'll be the Brooklyn Brown Ale. I've had that before, and that's a damn fine ale, I have to say. I look forward to reviewing that one for you. But I hope you've enjoyed this beer review and found it informative. I've enjoyed having a Scotch ale from one of the American breweries. The other one I did was the Founders Dirty Bastard Scotch Ale, and that was a really good one as well. But this one is quite different for the style, and that makes it interesting. You always want to stumble upon these things as a beer reviewer, but I hope you found this beer review interesting and informative. Please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you're enjoying your festive period. I've got a couple more of Christmas seasonal beers to do for you, so tune in for those if you are interested. But thanks again for your support, and thanks for watching my beer reviews. I'll be back soon with another one, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your festive period. Cheers.